Welcome to Vox Scream, a Kill Team podcast where we aim to help players of all skill levels supercharge their game and separate the signal from the noise. I'm Mark Meyer, joined by Kill Team heavyweights George Pratt and Joe Gallo. We're coming to you from the Triangle region in North Carolina. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. So we're hoping to kind of build off of our conversation from last week, where we talked a little bit about how we can elevate our competitive gameplay. Last week, we talked a bit about doing so by sort of taking these principles from fighting games and applying them to Kill Team. And this week, we are going to dig into a little bit more Kill Team specific stuff. We're going to try and talk a little bit about the play styles that are available to you and what teams might fit those play styles. I got to say, this one was a little bit tricky for me because I can think of the way that I like to play, and I can think of one or two teams that have a very distinct play style, but those all felt like kind of low-hanging fruit to me. Did you guys have any unique or interesting thoughts while coming to prepare for this exercise?
Yeah, no, I have no idea. Let's end the podcast right here. No, I have a ton of thoughts regarding this subject. This is something I've noticed since I've started playing the game, and I don't think really anybody talks about it, or at least not many people I've seen are self-aware enough to like recognize it within themselves, of like understanding that certain teams just are not good for your play style, and basically forcing the square peg through the round hole. And it hurts their overall game. And I think that that's hard for some people to accept, because for some people, it might be their favorite team, right? The thing that I always think of regarding this discussion is in terms of like a team that can support multiple play styles. And this was even true before this team took its evolution into the third edition, is Angels of Death, previously known as Intercession, right? Intercession previously had more limited ways to flex, to basically show the variety that team could have. And now we've added this extra element of what I will call the heroes of the team now, in that we have the captain, the sniper, and the heavy bolter. And even though the warriors are all effectively the same in terms of they don't have any variety, but there is a specific way that you can play the team that is both optimal for, what team you're going into, and also optimal for your play style, right? So like someone like Mark French would much more prefer playing that team run down, chain swords, dueler, aggressive, screaming to the God Emperor, that, and do very well playing that team, which is why he does well playing with Khorne. But on the flip side of that, look at Legionnaire. Legionnaire is now also set up in the same way, where you can play that team very cagey, shooty with Zeech. Now is once again maybe not the most optimal way to play it. I think a better analogy would be the way Legionnaire was in the last edition, because me and George, for example, played those two teams very differently. I was much more Nurgle, controlled aggression, kind of leaning on my defenses, whereas George preferred Zeech shooting and the extra movement of Slaanesh, which basically led into a different kind of play style. There's a lot of teams that really kind of fit this build. There are a few teams that are pigeonholed into a certain play style. So like Aquilons
Kazakhin.
Yeah, Kazakhin are a good example of that. Aquilons are a good example of that too. They are very much just a momentum-based team where you really start playing the game into the second, third turning points. But but that's the thing is like, if you are good at that play style, like I generally am, like I'm very much a momentum controlled aggression based player, then yeah, it fits my play style. Hand of the Archon, right? Let's look at the elf teams real quick. You have Hand of the Archon, Corsairs, Clowns, and Blades of Cain, right? Now, you would think all four of those teams would play the same way because of just the way Elf was the extra movement and all that other stuff. But when you really start to like drill down and like look at the actual rules for those teams, Corsairs play a very different team, comparatively speaking, to Hand of the Archon. Hand of the Archon play exactly like they should play. Hand of the Archon is, you're very much basing it on your cunning, so to speak. You're kind of trying to mind game your opponent with trying to get that extra CP. You're really trying to stay like hidden around corners and out of sight and on a conceal so you can get those shots off. Whereas Corsairs plays like pirates do. They run up the board, get the shit that they need to get, pull back, and hit hard as hell, right? There's a lot of different teams in this game. I think we have over 30 now, and there is a playstyle out there for everybody. And some teams facilitate those playstyles more than others.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. George?
I think about playstyles in a much it's simultaneously more rigid and less rigid way. For me, I tend to think of it as more of a plot diagram, insofar as there's an x-axis of offensive teams and defensive teams, and a y-axis of proactive teams and reactive teams, and then any team can be offensive, proactive, offensive, reactive, and such. And so for me, when you say a team's play style, that's what I think of a play style. Not so much of do Corsairs play like pirates, but more Corsairs are a offensive, proactive team in that they have the ability to determine the tempo of a game. And then their gimmick is that they have this flavor of pirates where they can interact with missions and they get benefits for being around important stuff, the markers. And so that's what I think of when I think of a play style.
Yeah, and if I'll add to that, something new with the new edition, and I'm sure you guys have noticed, is they're adding designer commentaries now on the at the end of the section where all the rules are for the new teams. And I don't know if you guys, either of you, have read those sections at all. But you really should if you haven't, because I think it brings a lot of insight on the mindset of the designers of like how they view you should play the team. Or at least what the design space they had is. And I actually, when I first picked up Aquilons and I read that section, it was very much what I had assumed that they were designed for. It says very much they were designed around like paratroopers and how hit hard, hit fast, and stuff like that. And I know that George, you would kind of say that that's not necessarily how you think of those spaces. It's more in technical, I guess it would be more technical terms for you versus like flavor terms, right?
Yeah.
So like a good example right now is we'll talk about this later, the Rekka crew and the Ratlings, right? That we just got the rules for. Both of those teams play exactly like you would think they would play. Rekka crew, given its name, plays very much as get in your opponent's face, start wrecking shit, very aggressive, lots of dice. That is the play style of the team that links up with their flavor. And the Ratlings are very much the opposite. They are stay and conceal, focus more on the objective, shoot things, and then on the Ogrins side of that is basically use the Ogrins to back up the Ratlings so they can do what they basically facilitate the Ratling play style, while the Ogrins kind of focus on the big targets, or basically have the Ogrins deal with the primary enemies and then have the Ratling shoot them down somewhere along those lines. And you can kind of flex how you would want that. So, like, for example, one of the team that I have played the most this edition is Night Lords, right? And the thing that I struggled with initially playing Night Lords was, they're in some ways worse Legionnaire, right? And there were initial discussions amongst like the chaos, what I'll call the Chaos Space Marine community, amongst all the kill team discords, because a lot of people love Night Lords. I think if Night Lords was the better team than Legionnaire, people would prefer to play Night Lords, because the books are very popular. But what I discovered in playing the team, and we'll bring this up as we talk about our league games potentially this week, they play exactly like Night Lords should play, and it didn't click with me until about 10 games in with me, is that against anything that is not a Space Marine, they love it. They love to go in, rip off their heads, wear their skin, whatever, right? But against other competent enemies, like other Legionnaires, like other Space Marines, you have to play dirty effectively. You have to stay in the shadows, take the pot shots where you can, injure them where you can, and then take advantage of those injured allies. And that was kind of the mindset that I've now taken into with this team, into Warp Coven, into Legionnaire, with the two teams that give them the most trouble. And I've been able to take out wins from both of those, against both of those matches, against Scott and against Mark French recently in the league. And, I think that having that mindset of like, okay, what is the space that this was created for? And what is this team trying to get across to me in the rules that will help facilitate me winning?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think the game designers of Kill Team have done an excellent job of marrying the fluff and design principles of a team to, again, what I consider its play style. So, like Death Guard, for instance. For me, Death Guard are a defensive but proactive team in that they're slow, they want to play the defensive game, they're good with contain, and they hit really hard. But you have 3 APL and you hit really hard, so you don't have enough bodies to react to your opponent. So you want to be the one setting the tempo, even despite your slow movement, and they have enough tools between shooting and their psychic powers and their 3-inch and 7-inch ploys and stuff to set that tempo. And so like that's what I mean by a offensive, defensive, proactive, reactive playstyle. So to give an example of a team that I have been playing, or in general, for me, I prefer teams that are offensive but are more in the middle of proactive and reactive, that allow me to basically react to if the board state is going poorly in my direction, or if I want to set the tempo. And so last edition, my favorite team in the game was Hand of the Archon, because they had the ability to go 7-inch move, which lets me basically set the tempo for the entire game, which is why I like Slanesh Legionary so much. And in this edition, so far, Hand of the Archon are still my favorite team, because again, they're just like, did you roll hits? They're all crits, so they're very offensive. They're very glass cannony. They're elves, but they're speedy enough and numerous enough, and with the heinous arrogance, you can delay an activation, so you can react to bad board states, but also proactively set tempo. And they're not as reactive as, say, Exaction Squad with their shields. They're not gonna just shut down charging lanes, and they're not as proactive as Legionary or Warp Coven, who just like, yeah, I got Seek, whatever. I'm just gonna dump 5 mortal wounds into you with a bunch of crits. Nothing you can do about it. But they can do both. They're just not as good at it as some other teams who are more specialized in those playstyles.
And I will also say there are some teams that kind of break this rule just through the sheer power, because they can kind of do everything. And I think Warp Coven and Legionnaire kind of fit that bill right now.
Yeah, I mean, hard to beat teams you can't kill any of the operatives on.
I mean, because my thing is like, they're good at shooting, they're good at fighting, they're good at defense. There's nothing they're not good at.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think in both of those frameworks, the one that you have established, Joe, and the one that you have established, George, you can look at Legionary and Warp Coven as being, able to fit into all areas of that, right? Like, Joe, like you're saying, Legionary and Warp Coven, both really good at shooting, really good at fighting, really good at setting up plays, all these just amazing things, really good at defense. And then, George, to your point, it's like, obviously, with these extremely strong pieces, you could be your choice of either proactive or reactive. Obviously, it's very easy to be proactive when it's just easy to kill things, get double kills,
and then you also
huge
can't
plays.
die.
And then because you can't die, you react, because your opponent is going to try to kill you at some point, and it's not going to work. And you'll just be able to react by saying, well, that was fun. Nice try.
yeah, it's definitely the two best teams in the game at the moment, but we should be getting a balance slate soon, and I believe in the designers.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah. And I think to kind of add a little extra to this playstyles conversation, I had a very interesting discussion with Mark French after our game, and George, this was included you because I think the way Mark French determines what teams he's going to play, in his own words, was that he usually talks to you and basically goes, "What is a weakness in my gameplay that I need to shore up?" And the second answer to that question was, "You haven't played a lot of melee teams," because he focused a lot on Pathfinders, and that's why he picked up Legionnaire, right? And I think that kind of mindset, that particular of like, okay, where is the weakness in my game, I think the poignant bit of advice that I could give regarding this playstyles conversation. While focusing on one team and being really good at that team is really good for competitive play, sometimes you're going to be forced to play in a way that your team is not good at playing at. And if you're folding in that aspect of the game because you aren't necessarily like as used to adapting to that, or at the very least, uh, not giving way to your opponent, but adapting to the way that they are coming at you. So like the classic melee team versus the shooting team aspect of, oh, well, usually shooting teams have at least one or two good melee operatives. So, how is the best way that I can use those to stave off the horde of usually screaming chaos that is heading my way, right?
Yeah, so I think what you're actually talking about is the a team's ability to be proactive and reactive. As essentially a proactive team is very good at setting the tempo of a game, but if you do not get the momentum and you cannot set that tempo, they tend to be very bad at reacting to your opponent's game plan. Something like Gellerpox is very proactive in that if the Gellerpox game plan doesn't work, you're probably losing.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about my play style in terms of the previous edition and what I've tried to do so far in third edition. I've thought of myself as being like a very reactive player. What is more likely true is that my preference is for these defensive proactive teams where I want people to come into the traps that I have set. I want them to come into my threat bubble by either playing points or trying to stage threats, and then having that sort of proactive approach to set the tempo. These are the sorts of things that I want. And I can sort of think about the teams that I liked in the last edition. I think that Vetguard was a team very much like that. You're kind of hanging back and trying to get picks where you can, but you're also being proactive by scoring a bunch of points early. Obviously, that's a bit different in the current edition, but what let's get into a little bit of categorization here because I want to learn a little bit more about what teams might fit my current play style, but I think we should address the low-hanging fruit. As soon as we started thinking about what a play style might be, it is very obvious to think about a melee team and a very aggressive play style. And I think we can put, aside from Warp Coven and Legionnaire, I think we can put Felgor into that category. What other teams can we put into what you might call offensive, proactive George, and show what you might call just a fucking melee team?
Yeah, basically, what I would categorize them as like melee rushdown, right? You're wanting to get into your opponents because it doesn't really matter points wise if all your opponents are dead. So Felgor definitely fits that category. I would argue that Corsairs fits that play style, though that they are not necessarily an all melee team. I think they flex between close range and long range shooting, more aggressive shooting, but they also
I agree.
and they also can flex into really aggressive melee. And the new rules for them in the third edition have only like elevated that play style through the ceiling, especially now that they're basically pseudo APL3. Clowns definitely fits that mold, particularly because of their flexibility and how they can just move up the board like no other team really can. I think, let's see, Kazrakin probably fits that bill now too because they have to focus so much on their close range shooting, and especially because now they can give themselves 7 inches. They want to get into your face, shoot at you as hard as humanly possible, and then just kind of overwhelm you from there. But obviously, that particular playstyle has some weaknesses.
Yeah, I think to your point, Kazakin want to be offensive proactive, but their rules are bad at it, and so they tend to be better as a defensive reactive team. But a defensive reactive team that is just shooting and no melee is a team that is bad, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And I think another good example of like an offensive team that's not necessarily like all like melee focused would be probably, let's see,
I
Trying
think
to go through
blooded. I think blooded
blooded.
are
Yeah,
really,
blooded definitely fit
really
the
like
category.
the pigeonholed
Yep.
offensive proactive team
Yep.
because they've got a lot of bodies. The dudes who are good at shooting do a lot of damage if you can hit. The dudes who are good at melee do a lot of damage if you can survive the melee. And like they're just a super interesting team that has a lot of ways to set the tempo of the game, either in melee or shooting and positioning. But their main weakness is that they're 7 wounds, 5 of save, which is like it's a fine weakness to have. A team should have a weakness. Legionary and Warp Coven.
Yeah, and I think to answer your question, Mark, I think the teams that you have played fit into another category for me. What I would call defensive shooting teams, or like defensive, or what George would probably call reactive. So I think Hearthkin Salvengers fit very squarely in that category. Because of their movement or lack of movement, I should say. They very much want to have you come to them, get within 6 inches, shoot them through the head, and then you can, once again, doesn't really matter if your opponent's scoring points if they're all dead.
That's an
Right?
interesting point because I feel like in the previous edition you could be much more proactive with them.
You
Like
absolutely could.
with
It's not
the
even a
2
question
up
for me.
grenades with proximate firepower,
Yep.
you could make really, really aggressive plays. I think ultimately you need to have some kind of measured aggression with them as well, because if your opponents don't have grudge tokens, then your team's going to fall pretty flat. I
Yeah,
think that you're right. I think that they are more defensive reactive at this point, where you're really just trying to set up a gun line in the back, hope people will come close enough. This kind of play style feels really, really tough in the new edition, where
It is.
people can just kind of ignore the primary, you know? I
Yeah,
I
and
have
agree.
I don't know if that's a broader critique of the game right now. I would need to see if we get a balance adjustment, if like things like that kind of even out.
I think
Yeah,
that it will eventually. I think that it's tough to imagine how some of it's going to change, but I think that there are that's another interesting point. We're thinking a lot about play style in terms of team right now. How can we take this discussion of play style and put it in terms of scoring points, in terms
Yes.
of crit up and tack up?
I
So
think I
go ahead,
think the
George.
most important thing to, even before we get to that, is to, if you're new to Kill Team, the most important thing you can do is play a bunch of different teams. And
Yep.
like if you're new to Kill Team, it doesn't matter what models you got. It doesn't really matter what base size you have. Just play a bunch of different teams, play with a bunch of different rules, and then figure out, oh, is this team fun? And then once you know 2 or 3 of your fun teams, then you can figure out, you can start this idea of, well, this is the play style that I find fun. Because once you find the play style fun, it becomes a lot easier to, sort of dig your heels in and drill down into the
Mm.
deepest parts of Kill Team. And because
Yes.
a lot of that stuff can get a little esoteric. Like, let's be real here. Kill Team is a super fun game, but there's a lot of weird interactions.
Oh, most certainly. Honestly, my biggest recommendation to new players, or like, let's say you're a veteran player and you're really trying to mix it up, or let's say you're like Mr. Mark Meyer and you haven't played a lot of Marine teams. And I think Marine teams facilitate their own play style on their own because you have such a limited body count. The best box, and honestly, probably like best priced box than in terms of you learning the game, is probably the Nemesis Claw box. I don't even recommend going Legionnaire, or any of the other. Angels of Death doesn't even have a box yet, which I don't even know if they will get their own like individual box. But
Never
Nemesis,
will.
yeah, they probably won't. Nemesis Claw has literally all the models you could ever want, all the tokens, all the cards, etc. And they play in a way that gets you to hit all aspects of the game. They have some shooting. They have a good amount of melee. They are not as tough as Legionnaire are, so we get you into bad habits when they eventually get nerfed again, or nerfed for the first time, I should say. And it'll get you learning those fundamentals. And then honestly, if Marines aren't your thing, or if like you just really don't like Marines generally, like from a lore perspective, I would probably recommend probably like the Blooded box would be a good one too. Because I think Blooded also is one of those things where like the models are pretty fragile, but it hits like all aspects of the game. And honestly, if you can get both, I think that would be a good place to start. And I know the heretics suggesting heretic teams is crazy. I think that those are two teams that really, like I said, touch on all aspects of the game, and also are two very different play styles, in my opinion. I think Nemesis Claw is, aggression is a lot of how they win the games in the long run. But if you go super aggressive with Nemesis Claw from the get-go, you're going to get shot off the board by most teams.
Yeah, I think Nemesis Claw is the weird elite team that is defensive more than offensive.
Yes, they absolutely
If you want to
are.
be defensive, proactive with Nemesis Claw, and like we said, Blooded are offensive and proactive. So they're both proactive teams. They both want to set the tempo, but Nemesis Claw want to do it from a defensive posture, while Blooded, you could, if your opponent gives you something juicy, you could just be like, yeah, whatever, this guy goes on engaged turn 1, he'll shoot. I did some damage, I lost him. Oh well, I've got 13 more.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I mean, have they reprinted or redone every team yet now with the new releases?
I have no idea.
I believe at this point there are, if not boxes out for all the teams, they are up for pre-order as of this recording.
Yeah, on pre-order as of today, I guess. So there is a wide variety of teams out there. The only teams I would just straight up not recommend you play would be Legionnaire, just because I do think, and Warp Coven I just wouldn't recommend you play because it's an expensive team to collect that for a team that's going to get hit in like a month. But in general, like if you're really like, ooh, Legionnaire's juicy, they're really good, it's not going to help your game. And unless you're really trying to get your golden ticket in the next month, like if you're going to LVO or whatever, I just can't find it in my heart to recommend one of my favorite teams because I do think that will actively hurt your game. And it'll be really interesting too when those teams get the nerfs hammer, how someone like Scott, reacts, since he's played that team the entire new edition now, and it will almost feel like a new game. The power of those teams, comparatively speaking. We talk about play style, but like if your play style is I just win because my rules are better than you, like that leaves you in a weird spot tactically as a player and as somebody who wants to grow.
Scott's a Warp Coven specialist. He played basically Warp Coven all of last edition when they were meh at best.
He had an undefeated 10-game stretch before, like back when they were bad. So I mean, if you're a good player, you're going to be fine. If you are a new player or a player who's very used to a particular play style and you've been relying on rules, I mean, I don't think that is what Scott has been doing, to be quite honest. I think that if you are relying on overly strong rules, sure, there's an argument to be made that you shouldn't play strong teams. But I don't think that's the case for a lot of the people who are playing these teams, at least in our local meta. Here's a question I've got. Getting back to this thread that I've been pulling on about the crit up and the tack up, what kind of a game plan in the new edition would work for a defensive reactive type team? Because that seems like the tricky thing is you're not going to be able to move up and plant beacons or
Plague Marines
score. Well, what George just said is that that's more of a proactive team. Like you want to be defensive, but you're also trying to set the tempo.
Yeah, because it's hard. Because I think that there are not many defensive reactive teams. I think one of the few ones is Exaction Squad. And I agree that Salvagers are a defensive reactive team until you sort of get their rules down just like fully straight in your head. Then I think they transform into a defensive proactive team. But as a pure defensive reactive team, I think really what your game plan is to, like, you draw a line in the sand, and that line is your deployment zone, and then you move up the board, and you just you move that line forward, but you never cross it. You just wait for your opponent to cross it, and then react accordingly. And so
I don't know, maybe it's the way I play Plague Marines, but that sounds exactly like Plague Marines to me.
I mean, yeah, and there's like you can play Plague Marines defensive reactively. There's nothing wrong with that.
Like I genuinely like do not go past the first third of my opponent's side of the board.
I guess the real question is, are you waiting for your opponent?
Or at least in general, my game plan with them is always like I usually take contain. I want them to come to me. then I react to them usually either scoring points or trying to get into me because they want to try to start getting their claws into me or whatever they're trying to do.
I think the big difference is that if you are being defensive and reactive, you're not even crossing over onto your opponent's side of the board. You are waiting for them to come out into a position where they are exposed, and then and only then are you going to move over. Whereas, like,
well, I think to that point, to that point, I think not many people do that anyway. Like, how often is it your opponent?
And that's exactly the point, is that there's not a lot of teams that support that play style.
Because I think it's just not the way the game is designed to a certain extent, right? Because, you know, very often people will not stick their head out unless you really like need to do it because you're desperate for those points, right? The only thing I can maybe think of is like Vet Guard, potentially, right? But even then, you'd argue like they want to.
But that's even a change from this edition to last edition. Nobody's playing Vet Guard this edition because they have to play like that. Whereas, like, there's no incentive for them to like push up and be all up in your business.
Yeah, in fact, there's an opposite incentive, and it's called the kill op. Right?
Exactly.
So I think that to that point, I think like the most defensive, like if we're just taking like the reactive, proactive part out of it, the most defensive teams to me in the game are Plague Marines, Hearthkin. Let's see. I'm trying to go through my head here. Probably Vet Guard to an extent. Let's see. I'm trying to think who else. Extraction, like George said. Let's see. I'm trying to think like defend the castle play styles. That's usually where my brain goes for that one. If we're like really looking at like what a true defensive play style is, I'm planting myself here and not, you know, and I don't generally move, or I'm waiting to have my opponent come up, which we already talked about. But
what kind of play? So another play style I'm thinking about that maybe doesn't fit quite into George's matrix is just a straight up board control play style. Like, I want to be able to
Commandos, baby.
Tell me more, and tell me some other teams outside of Commandos, because that's a good point, and that's a team that I was having a little trouble categorizing.
Yeah, Commandos, man. I think right now, I think, well, and I don't know how true this was last edition, but especially now because, you know, the Grot can just zip anywhere, score points, and you kind of want to control your opponent from really running you over. And the way you generally do that is like the pure strength of individual operatives, right? So like the being able to use Justice Scratch in a really tactical way. You know, because for me, every time I play into Commandos, my thought is always, all right, when are they burning Justice Scratch? When are they burning Justice Scratch, right? Because, you know, when they burn that is when I feel like I'm available to actually start punching into them, even as Marines, right? Because all of their operatives generally hit so hard.
Wait, you're losing me, Joe. You're losing me. Tell me about how Justice Scratch factors into a board control play style.
So, because, for example, let's say I take an Orc boy, right? And they're 4 attacks, sitting on 3s, 4 or 5, right? So if I take that boy and I'm putting him on, let's say, the midpoint, right? And let's say I drop a smoke on him because the boys can drop smokes on themselves, right? That guy is very hard to move now in both melee and shooting because I have Justice Scratch up. Because either I'm shooting that guy and I have now exposed myself to getting shot back, therefore controlling the board and keeping my opponent back by either killing the enemy and or keeping them on their side of the board, or they're charging me. Let's say it's another operative that has 4 or 5 in melee, and let's say, I don't know, they have 8 wounds, or I'm trying to think of an operative that you would generally charge and do an Orc boy and feel pretty confident about. Let's say a Space Marine, right? Let's say 14 wound Space Marine. Assault Intercessor, 4, 5, 5 attacks, right? So you charge into, because I think I've literally had this happen to me before. Is where you'll charge into that. You get 3 hits with the reroll, and you get with Wah up. Let's say you also get 3 hits, right? So I hit you. Let's even say one of those is a crit, right? I start off with hitting you with a 5, and then I hit them back with a 4. I Justice Scratch the other one. I'm alive on 2. Oh no, I've put the Intercessor down either 4 or 8 wounds. I keep my commando knob away just for this exact thing, and then charge up with the power call or big choppa, and that's a dead Marine. And then I also still have that boy sitting on that point, therefore controlling this side of the board or my half of the board, keeping those very rush down intercessors either away or dead.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's going to really feed into their game plan, like making some good infiltration. Like if they're going to take infiltration, which seems like a really good choice with commandos. But yeah, and having that board control is going to really kind of keep people off of the grot. It's going to keep people out of it's going to keep people guessing what your next move is going to be. I like that. George, what about you? Can you think of any kinds of teams that would play like a really intensive board control kind of play style, and where that might fit into your particular matrix and thought process on team categories?
Yeah, I agree that Commandos are definitely a board control team. They're an offensive reactive team in my little matrix. And then Exaction Squad are also a board control team, and they are defensive reactive. Basically, any of the reactive teams are board control teams. Like the way Joe plays Plague Marines is a reactive board control team. But it's hard to really say what is quote unquote board control, just because really anything you do that projects threat to your opponent is board control. So like you wouldn't think that an elf team has a lot of board control, being they're just fast glass cannons. But their ability to project a 9-inch shooting bubble or a 9-inch, a 10-inch charge threat, and their ability to just, if I charge you, I'm gonna get this kill, and if I'm a 3 APL model, maybe I'll get the kill and pick up another. That is a kind of board control. So I don't think board control is a play style per se. It is much more it is a consequence of a team's ability to project threat.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, I think Commandos does that better than any team in the game. I mean, 10 wound bodies and being able to just tank a hit, being generally good at like one thing specifically for that model, is you can't get better than that.
I don't know if they do it better than any team in the game, but I think they're one of the best. Because whenever I play into Commandos, my entire game plan is just burn their just a scratch. Pick a important model that is placed somewhere they want to keep alive, like an objective, but is otherwise kind of meh, like a boy, and then shoot them hard or fight them hard, force them to burn just a scratch, and then take the rest of my team and then go shoot all of the models that I actually want dead, like the sniper or the rocket or the slasher boy or the breacher boy, all of those guys who I really want dead. Once they burn just a scratch on that boy on that objective marker that is part of their plan but not really my plan, that's when I go hard. And so there's ways to dismantle Commando's ability to stand on, like, if you just ignore the guy on the objective or force them to burn just a scratch on that objective and then focus hard on the rest of the team, yeah, that guy is still on that objective in smoke, but it's just a boy, and then you kill the slasher boy, you kill the breacher boy, maybe you picked up the rocket boy, maybe you picked up the Daka boy, and so 10 wounds 5 up save with no just a scratch isn't as durable to shooting as it is into melee. And so like it's easy enough if you can pick up those shots by getting within 2 inches, or if they're on engage with the shooties, to sort of dismantle that game plan, which is why I don't think they're the best, but they're certainly up there.
Well, on the point of orcs, as I think we have talked playstyle to death here, we got rules, baby, today. Literally, we got rules for the Ratlings, and we got rules for the new Rekka boys. General impressions, Mark and George.
I haven't looked closely at the Ratlings yet, but I have looked pretty thoroughly over the orcs, and I like them. I like how orky they feel. I like how their weapon special rules is just 6 dice. I think
Yeah,
that
basically.
I think that they're really cool. I think that I leading up to this, one of my predictions was this is going to be a big charge, fight, shoot team. A lot of their melee guys don't have guns, and so that's going to be kind of hard. But I like a lot of the weapons. I like their rules. I like how a lot of the ploys from commandos are present here on the tank buses. So that makes me feel like it's kind of like elves, where it's like this orc archetype is going to develop its own play style by having this access to Justice Scratch, by having this, access to the, rerolls and melee, that sort of thing. I really like the Rocketeer, and I really like the dual rocket pistols on the knob.
Dual rocket pistols is so cool.
Amazing. It's so
cool.
So
It's
awesome. 4-up save, 12 wounds pretty much across the board. They can take 5 gunners, which is hilarious. Though you likely won't. You will probably just take, I think, 3 or 2 at the most. Their warriors are kind of terrifying.
Dude, they're so scary.
5-6 hitting on 3s, usually with a reroll, is quite scary.
That's like it might be the best warrior in the game. It's up there with the legionary warrior.
Yeah, but as Mark said, they don't have shooting, so
buy him crack grenades.
Yeah, but I guess that would apply.
You get to use Rekka points. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh wow, ooh, that's actually pretty good. That's real good actually. We'll see what happens, because obviously the best teams are ignoring all that piercing, but that's likely going away.
I'll tell you, a great counterplay to ignoring piercing is rolling more dice.
That's also fair. And honestly, on 6 dice, it is very unlikely you're not going to get 1-6.
Speak for yourself.
It's like it's between a 60 and 70% chance, I think, to roll a 6 on 6 dice. So it's a pretty good chance.
I failed to roll a 5 up on 8 dice with a lethal 5 weapon. Speak for yourself.
They're not talking about outside of probabilities in your particular dice. And if that's the case, George, you should never play this team, to be honest, because
they look so fun. I am so excited to play this team.
I know, but I'm just saying, with the
I will never get Rekka points.
That's my point. Is like, if your dice are truly cursed in the way you believe they are, then you should never play.
I'm not going to take him to a big tournament. I just want to roll a bunch of rocket gunners. Like, I just want to be like, 6 dice over there. 6 dice over there.
I am undecided how much I'm going to invest into the orc team. I picked up my box, and I actually just got rid of the ratlings too, because I don't know. They seemed fun, and I think the models look great. But I did look at the ratling rules. Because our community seemed to focus on pretty much exclusively the orcs, which should shock nobody if you knew this community. But the rattlings are looking really good. The big things that stand out to me, and I don't know if you guys saw the stat lines for the ogrins.
Pretty good.
16 wounds, and they can get a 3-up save. That is
better than a tank bust.
That is quite scary, in my opinion. And they can get 4-6 stun on top of that.
And block 2 dice.
That, and then the rattlings pretty much all hit on either 2s or 3s, and usually have some form of a reroll on top of that. They play the mission very well. I will say the only thing that may make the team really bad is the rattlings being on 6 wounds. That is a little scary in terms of like just how many teams will one-shot a rattling in melee.
I disagree that the rattlings play the mission well. I think their ogrins can stand on objectives well, but since every crit op requires a mission action and they have a stupid rule and only 2 APL, you're basically going to rely on moving ogrins up to the objectives on turn 1 in order for them to do stuff on turn 2, or moving up very, very fragile rattlings who you want to stay in the back shooting to get the objectives. I do not think this team plays the objective hardly at all, is essentially what I see in this team. Like, I just don't think they play the crit op.
In my mind, the way that they play the mission is they take the guy that can just do the mission action for free, kind of keep him tucked behind the ogrins and the bullgrins, and go up and basically steal the point with the extra APL from the Vox person, and basically just go boop boop and then just run back to where they need to go. That's in my mind probably how they are. I have to see the size of the models in terms of like how easy it is to just hide them behind heavy so that literally nobody can see them. But I think that, like, I hate to say this, but I think like the size of the models does play a huge factor. If these guys can pretty much like mostly hide behind light barricades and like be not visible, particularly the ones that are crouching, and they already have super conceal on top of that, it's like you're not going to be shooting them often. You're very likely going to be like just running into them and just killing them. Which I guess the team is on 11 bodies with 3 Ogrins/Bulgrins, right?
Is it 11? I thought it was 10, but I could be
Is
wrong.
it?
It's 11 because it's your leader plus 10 dudes.
Yeah.
Well, that's if you take all ratlings, though, right?
No, the
Yeah.
Bulgrins don't count as extra models. If you don't take
Really?
Bulgrins, then you get strat ploys for free.
Oh, okay. So they're doing the whole Vet Guard thing. Got it. Okay,
Sorta,
that's
kinda.
interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's gonna be an 11 body team. I don't think they play the crit op. Like, I just don't think they do it, which is fine for frankly a lot of the crit ops. Like, you can just not play the crit op.
That tank buster rifle though is hilarious. Hitting on 2s, 4 mortal wounds 4, I think, or something like that.
It's very funny.
It's just some crazy amount of damage that it does. It will basically kill anything in the game.
I think you can give it severe with an equipment or ploy too.
Yeah. Oh, also the fact you can just make everyone hit on 2s as well with the purloined rations is pretty great. Which is also very halfling if you think about it in terms of them eating food for superpowers. But,
I think my favorite part about the Ratling team is their non-Ogren melee specialist, and they managed to make what is essentially halfling Sly Marbo, and he's actually kind of scary. Like, he's actually kind of scary.
Yeah, isn't he 3/5?
3/5. Yeah. Yes. And lethal 5 or like severe somehow.
He could charge on conceal, and if he does that during his activation until the end of the activation, he gets an extra attack on its combat knife and brutal.
Yeah, that was it.
So he becomes 4 attacks, 3 up, 3/5, balanced, brutal.
Better than a Space Marine fist. Amazing. But I think both these teams are super fun. I mean, I think the last 2 releases have been some of like the best in terms of like straight up model releases. I mean, because both of these teams are just new models. The Ratlings are new, the Rekkas are new, the Aquilons are new, the Vespids are new. I highly doubt that's going to continue. I'm sure the next box is probably just going to be an upgrade sprue. But still, I'm really happy with how, like, if you're coming into this game, there is no better time to do it with all these like cool models, especially if you're into any of those teams flavor wise. And I think they're all going to be solid. I think at least both the Rekkas and the Ratlings are probably solid B tier.
Can kill
like
Marine?
Ratlings can very easily kill Marines with those Bulgrins. It's not even a question.
I think Ratlings can kill Marine. They just can't play the crit op, and they're probably going to struggle into any tac op that isn't, what is it, implant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rekkas are comedically good at killing elites. Honestly, I wouldn't like into Legionnaire. It's not a terrible idea just to take 4 warriors and just, if they're gonna run at you anyway, like, you're probably dealing 10 damage with just a scratch. Like,
dude, 5/6 brutal is so good as a melee. 5/6 brutal balanced with WoW up and Rekka points, insane.
Yeah, quite good. And I unfortunately, you're probably gonna need a second sprue, which is highly unfortunate to put it mildly. If I do feel like these
just magnetize.
Yeah. Well, can you? Well, no. How would you?
You put a magnet in the shoulder, and a magnet in the torso, where the shoulder goes, and then you're good. You've magnetized.
I know that, but I'll be looking to see if anyone's going to be getting rid of their Rekkas, because usually people give you a good price if they're just trying to get rid of them. So because I do think this team will require 2 sprues. But they look really fun. And I think they're going to be everywhere with the way that our community is, because we love orcs. I can think of 5 or 6 people off the top of my head in our community that are orc participators in the WA, if one could say.
And they do just look fun. Like,
Yes.
I personally don't find the Ratlings particularly fun. I think the Ogrins are interesting, and I think the Ogrins look fun. But I think the Ogrins look fun for the same reason that I think the Rekkas look fun, in that I can move up the board and say, that guy over there, I'm gonna go punch him. And I find that
exactly.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts, gentlemen, on the new teams?
Orcs precious. We loves them.
Yes, we do. But yeah, I'm really excited about the things coming up. We are gonna probably be off next week, I think, by the time this comes out.
We might have one more episode before Christmas. We're gonna try and do like an episode swap for the week of Christmas, because I don't think we're gonna be recording that week. But looking forward to whatever's next, gentlemen.
Yes, and thank you for everyone listening this year. This was something we did very spur of the moment, I would say. We've all been kind of wanting to do this, but all of your support has been kind of overwhelming, and I really appreciate it. I'm really excited to see how far we can go with this. I think one of the things that I think all 3 of us can agree on is we try to be a positive force in this community. And try to get more people into this game and try to be a little less doom and gloom, as it feels like it is a little often around here, around these parts. We came together because we all love Kill Team, and I don't enjoy many things more than doing the thing that I love with these 2 people. So yeah, happy Christmas, guys, and I'm excited to see what comes next in 2025.
Joe, I hate you too.
It's a Christmas Kill Team miracle.
For legal reasons, that was a joke.
What, you think I would sue you?
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Vox Screen. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. Please follow, subscribe, and leave us a review. Any of those things are going to help us grow. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another episode.